It's 10 past the hour. Continued protests by Muslims around the world over statements made by Pope Benedict XVI will likely do little to improve relations between Muslims and non-Muslims here in the United States. A new report says that the number of bias incidents against Muslim Americans is up almost a third over last year. The Council on American-Islamic Relations says it received almost 2,000 complaints in 2005, the most ever recorded by the group. Reports of hate crimes were also up more than 8% over the same period. Joining us now with more on the report is Arsalan Iftikhar, Legal Director for the Council on American-Islamic Relations, who joins us now from our Washington Bureau. And Arsalan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll get to the report in a moment, but first I'd like to talk to you and get your thoughts on the continued disagreement between Muslims and the Vatican. What needs to be done?
Well, I think American Muslims and global Muslims are still kind of scratching their heads as to the latest statements by Pope Benedict XVI. We believe that his apology is definitely a step in the right direction in trying to ameliorate the situation between the Vatican and the Muslim world, especially keeping in mind that the wonderful ecumenical work of Pope John Paul II in trying to build Muslim-Christian relations.
Well, not that Al-Qaeda is representative of a majority of Muslims, but the group in Iraq is warning its war against Christianity will go on until Islam takes over the world. And even Iran's president, who's scheduled to address the United Nations today, is calling for protests to continue. Is there no room for dialogue here? And at this point, is even a full apology enough?
Well, I think there is room for dialogue, and I think that that's what the mainstream American Muslim and global Muslim community is trying to do. Of course, such divisive rhetoric coming from the Pope is obviously going to elicit extreme rhetoric from other sides as well, and we want the mainstream moderate voices of reason and dialogue to prevail here and make sure that this will help to foster understanding and harbor better relations between the two faiths.
Let's talk about these sheer numbers, though. I mean, the average American sitting at home sees the news, and that's the only thing that they see. So their idea of what's going on abroad is that not only are people being violent because of a few words that were spoken, for many people it seems an overreaction. Is that fair?
Well, I think we have to understand, cultural, religious, and historical nuance here. I think it's important to realize that, for anyone and any person of faith, if their faith is maligned and insinuated to be evil and inhuman, they're obviously going to be offended by that, especially when that remark is coming from the leader of one of the largest churches in the world. And that's why I think it's very important for the Pope to clarify his remarks. And he has said a few times now that these are not representative of his views, and so that's why we are wondering why, if they're not representative of his views, why his speechwriters, decided not to use wisdom and used inflammatory rhetoric instead.
And in fact, it was part of a much larger speech. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that even with that response and that the fact of that larger speech is lost in the whole debate?
Absolutely. I mean, I've read the entire text of the speech numerous times, and I think that if you read the speech in its totality, you'll get a better understanding of what the Pope was, trying to do in his address. Unfortunately, when you are going to quote a 14th century, Byzantine emperor who, refers to Islam as being evil and inhuman, unfortunately, that's the one soundbite that's going to make the evening news, and unfortunately, the larger context is going to be completely lost after that.
Now to your group's report. CARE recorded almost 2,000 bias incidences last year. Tell me about the nature of them.
Well, it really runs the gamut, Michelle. Everything from employment discrimination, racial profiling, to actual anti-Muslim hate crimes against American Muslims and Islamic institutions. For example, we've seen a great increase in the number of American mosques that have been targeted by firebombings, vandalism, drive-by shootings, and the like. And unfortunately, we think that this sort of anti-Muslim Islamophobic sentiment is unfortunately becoming a lot more pervasive in our society, and that's where we're trying to analyze and show trends of.
1 in 4 of the incidents occurred at the workplace. Are we talking about job discrimination or just physical and verbal harassment?
Well, you know, again, it really runs the gamut, but in terms of the workplace, we've seen a lot of employment discrimination against American Muslims, both male and female, people being fired from their jobs merely because of the fact that they're Muslim or perceived to be Muslim. And that's something that is important to keep in mind, is that in over 200 years of our American democracy, we have to remember that even during times of war, we have to treat all people equal, regardless of race, religion, or socioeconomic status.
How do you take away that fear, misunderstanding, and hatred? How does your group do that?
Well, we do it through education, and we honestly believe that once Americans start to understand more about Muslims and more about Islam, and to understand that American Muslims are their friends, their co-workers, and their neighbors, I think it'll help to give a human face to Muslims and Islam. Unfortunately, so far, you know, it's only been dominated by, you know, 10-second sound bites of people like Osama bin Laden, who are by no means representative of Muslims or Islam. And I think that once people realize that they come into contact with Muslims on a daily basis, whether it's their doctors, their accountants, their engineers, or their teachers, they'll understand that American Muslims and Muslims in general are peace-loving, law-abiding citizens.
Arsalan Iftikhar, Legal Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.